Batting for Cuba, Jamaica's Prime Minister makes a case for lifting the decades-old embargo. Weekend Business Report starts right now. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Kenil Gale. Thanks so much for joining us this week. Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness addressed the United Nations General Assembly on Thursday, where, among other things, he made a case for lifting the Cuban embargo. We'll have excerpts from the Prime Minister's speech in a bit, but right now, here are some of the week's top news stories from the BATV News Desk. Global ratings agency Standard & Poor's S&P is forecasting a positive outlook for Jamaica's economy. The ratings agency upgraded Jamaica's economic outlook from stable to positive. Here's Ashana Small with the details.
According to the latest Standard & Poor's report, the economic, fiscal, and monetary reforms that Jamaica has made over the years have resulted in the country making material progress in achieving macroeconomic stability and improvement in its external debt burden. The rating agency theorizes that if this continues, there is a 1 in 3 likelihood of the country getting a ratings upgrade within the next 12 months. However, S&P was quick to point out that this is dependent on Jamaica further strengthening its external liquidity position while maintaining tight fiscal policy, high primary surpluses, and modestly positive real GDP growth. An upgrade could also be given if the economy becomes more resilient to potential external shocks, including possible higher oil prices and economic growth is sustained over longer periods. According to S&P, it is expected that the government will continue to meet strict fiscal targets while maintaining its commitment to a gradual reduction in the country's debt and interest burdens. The government is also expected to continue advancing towards a more effective monetary policy framework for the central bank, including a more flexible exchange rate. But there could be a downside. The ratings agency says Jamaica's ratings could be revised to stable over the next 12 months if the recently improving trajectory of the country's external position reverses and begins to weaken, or the government misses fiscal targets, leading to an increase in debt and interest burdens. Meanwhile, S&P says its ratings on Jamaica continue to be limited by the island's high debt and interest burden, which restricts its fiscal flexibility, and the slow GDP growth constrained by structural impediments. However, the ratings agency notes that the government's tight fiscal stance fosters macroeconomic stability, including low inflation, and supports the country's creditworthiness. Additionally, the country's external indebtedness has improved in recent years, and international reserves are growing. In the meantime, S&P says ongoing changes in the governance and mandate of the central bank could gradually improve Jamaica's current limited monetary flexibility.
The government is proposing to spend an additional $17 billion for this fiscal year. This is outlined in the first supplementary estimates for the 2018-2019 financial year, which was tabled by Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Dr. Nigel Clark, in the House of Representatives on Tuesday. Here's Nordia Francis Williams with the breakdown of the additional spending.
The estimates show that the budget has been increased from $773.68 billion to $791.11 billion. Recurrent housekeeping expenses have moved from $560.04 billion to $572.46 billion, for an additional expenditure of $12.4 billion. In terms of capital development spending, this is proposed to be increased by $5 billion, moving from $213.64 billion to $218.64 billion. Of this increase, $7.3 billion will go towards the major infrastructure development program. The government says the additional funds are required because of faster than programmed project execution. Another $7 billion has been set aside for a grant to local authorities to deal with the payment of arrears and current charges for street lighting. The states of public emergency and zones of special operations have forced the government to find additional monies. Some $445 million have been earmarked in the supplementary estimates to go towards enhanced security measures, the establishment of the Public Safety and the Traffic Enforcement Branch, and to improve 60 priority police locations island-wide. In addition, $527.66 million will be spent on the re-verification of voters. This exercise will involve the phased removal of deceased persons from the voters list. Members of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee, PAAC, and the Standing Finance Committee of Parliament are to deliberate on the supplementary estimates next week, following which it will be debated in the House of Representatives for its approval.
Moving on now, Prime Minister Andrew Holness used his address at the 73rd UN General Assembly to call for reform to how small island developing states, SIDS, are classified. He also called for the economic embargo on Cuba to be lifted. Here are some of the points Prime Minister Holness made.
Jamaica is developing the social and political consensus to pursue policies which will secure our economic independence. In the last decade, we have engaged in deep structural reform of our economy. We have reduced our debt profile from being one of the most highly indebted countries in the world. We have transformed our energy sector. And importantly, we have increased our social support for the most vulnerable. And what has been the result of this? Our sovereign ratings and outlook have moved from negative to positive. Jamaica is not sitting and waiting on the world to save us. As a small island developing state with numerous challenges, we are taking our destiny into our own hands. Ultimately, we believe our economic independence will secure our resilience. Nevertheless, we continue to strengthen traditional partnerships and build new ones with like-minded countries around the world that see the global benefits in countries, big and small, rich and poor, working together to solve issues too big for any of us to solve alone. Jamaica and our CARICOM brothers and sisters cannot have the luxury of engaging in a philosophical debate on whether or not climate change is real. The issue is existential for us. Major storms are no longer uncommon. They have given way to superstorms. They are stronger and more frequent. Every year, the Caribbean region, leading right up to the southeastern coast of the United States of America, live in fear for 5 months. 5 months of hoping that the devastation that was wreaked on North Carolina, on Antigua and Barbuda, on Texas, on Grenada, are not visited upon them this year. Have you seen what has happened to Dominica? The disaster wreaked by these superstorms is the closest thing that we can imagine or compare to a nuclear event. Several small island developing states, like Jamaica, are deemed to have graduated to middle-income status primarily by virtue of their GDP per capita. Many of them, however, are highly indebted and vulnerable. High debt ratios constrain the ability to secure domestic fiscal resources at reasonable cost for implementation of national development goals. The reality is that even though many have made advances in reducing levels of extreme poverty, several of our broader development gains have been stalled. We therefore highly commend the work of ECLAC, which affirms the importance of contemplating and complementing the per capita income criteria by addressing structural gaps that retard development prospects for middle-income countries. Accordingly, I am reiterating my call for the international financial institutions to address this persistent problem known as the middle income trap. We believe that a special highly indebted middle income initiative could provide the framework for the type of support that these countries require. It is our great hope that the UN high-level middle-income countries meeting scheduled for later this year will give the fullest consideration to these matters and ways in which the UN system can provide support. Societies function best when an inclusive global environment is created, where no one feels left behind. Implementation of the SDGs must be people-centered. Embargoes and other financial and economic barriers must not become tools to prevent people, such as our neighbors, the citizens of the Republic of Cuba, from attaining their rightful development goals. Jamaica continues to call for a lifting of the embargoes against that country. Madam President, our global alliance comprises 193 sovereign states. But there is no denying the fact that we are all interdependent. A joint and multifaceted response is required to surmount the myriad hurdles ahead of us, for it is only through collaboration that we can build our societies and secure our common future. Our legacy must be one that uplifts and inspires. Let this, therefore, be our mandate for this 73rd session of our General Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, I thank you.
Company news comes up next, then later, Google turns 20, a look back at the evolution of the tech giant. Stay with us. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. Here's this week's company news.
Panjam Investment Limited has acquired 100 million shares or 6.1% stake in JMMB Group Limited. According to the Panjam Group, its investment in JMMB Group Limited is in line with its long-term strategy to take meaningful equity positions in strong growing companies with a regional reach. The group's purchase of JMMB Group Limited shares will be funded with proceeds of a private placement of $2.7 billion in unsecured notes with a 19-month maturity. The Wasinga Group Caribbean Limited, parent company of Wasinga Group, has signed an agreement with Worthy Park Sugar Estate. The deal will give Wasinga the responsibility for marketing and distributing Worthy Park products. Director and shareholder of Worthy Park Estate, Peter McConnell, says this partnership will help the brand with market penetration. Meanwhile, chairman of the Wasinga Group, William Mafood, says the move will provide a good sum of revenue for his company. Mr. Mafood says the partnership will also be a good complement for its existing brands. Expectations are that the sales volume will double within the first year of the deal. Usain Bolt's Tracks and Records will open its first location in London on October 10. This will be the first of 15 restaurants to be opened across the UK over the next 5 years. The restaurant chain already has locations in Kingston, Montego Bay, and Ocho Rios. Managing director of Franjam, the agency that manages the restaurant, Gary Matalon, says for the first time a local homegrown concept has evolved into an international franchise. The restaurant will be located a few minutes walk from Liverpool Street Station. It will also feature reggae music as well as live music from some of the most popular DJs in the UK.
Let's now take a look at the closing numbers from the major stock markets around the world. When we come back, more of the week's top stories from the BATV News Desk, so stay with us. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. More news now. Prime Minister Andrew Holness is reassuring the public that the additional security measures in the corporate area won't cause undue traffic congestion. This as several of the roads heavily used by motorists to avoid the 3 miles construction fall within the newly declared state of public emergency. Jamila Maitland tells us more.
Motorists are concerned as several roads such as Waltham Park Avenue, Delacree Road, Marcus Garvey Drive, and Maxfield Avenue fall within the newly declared state of public emergency. Maxfield Avenue was recently upgraded to allow the free flow of traffic. However, Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the state of emergency will not cause any undue delay for motorists.
I give the assurance that there should be no undue delay. The Chief of Defence Staff has outlined some things that the public could do to make the transit easier, but what it will do is to make the transit safer for the motoring and pedestrian public.
Mr. Holness acknowledges the complaints from motorists as a result of states of public emergency in St. James and the sections of St. Catherine, but says this time it will be different. JDF Chief of Defence Staff Major General Rocky Meade explains why.
We are establishing, as far as is feasible, the checkpoints in areas where the vehicles to be checked can be pulled entirely out of the road and not block any of the lanes. And it is our aim to ensure that traffic flows effectively while maintaining the best security control we can. So that is a priority that has been communicated to the troops.
He's encouraging motorists not to slow down unless directed.
During this period of state of emergency, citizens will encounter operations including checkpoints. We ask that as you approach these checkpoints that you lower your windows and during the dark periods, turn on your roof lights. The more visibility the troops have of who's in the vehicle is the less need there may be to stop you and actually check.
The University of the West Indies has been ranked in the top 5% of the universities in the world. That's according to the Times Higher Education World University Rankings for 2019. This is the first time the institution has acquired such a high ranking. According to a statement from the UWI, the rankings show that the institution is among the top 1,258 universities across the globe. The UWI has ranked at 591. The university is the only Caribbean institution on the worldwide list. It was also the only Caribbean university ranked earlier this year in the Times Higher Education 2018 Latin American University Rankings. The Latin America region is home to over 100 universities. Director and shareholder of Worthy Park Sugar Estate, Peter McConnell, says his company can supply brown sugar for manufacturers if the government decides to reimpose duty on white sugar for manufacturing. Here's more.
Manufacturers have been up in arms about the government's threat to remove the duty-free import regime for granulated sugar for manufacturing. Director and shareholder at the Worthy Park Sugar Estate and managing director at Tradewind Citrus, Peter McConnell, says it would add major costs to production. However, he says Worthy Park would be able to step in to provide sugar for manufacturers if necessary.
The beverage industry doesn't want that to happen because they don't want to add cost. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. If that regime changes, Worthy Park will very quickly put in the facility to prepare the brown sugar for use by the beverage industry in Jamaica.
He says it would take about a year and $1 million investment to make it happen.
A year, less than a year. Once the decisions are made in a timely manner by government, and gives the industry time to prepare and react, then it should be seamless. It may be about $1 million worth of investment, but we're prepared to make it.
The viability of Jamaica's sugar industry has been an ongoing discussion for several years, with the industry no longer benefiting from the preferential market for export to the European Union and the unstable nature of the world sugar export market. Many have suggested that Jamaica should abandon the local sugar industry. But Mr. McConnell says there's still a way for the island sugar industry to survive.
No, absolutely not. We produce enough sugar to meet our needs for brown sugar needs, and I think we should definitely continue. And Worthy Park can do that successfully, efficiently, cost effectively, and there's definitely a future for sugar.
When we come back, power and privacy. Google turns 20. More WBR after this break. Welcome back to Weekend Business Report. Google is celebrating its 20th anniversary. What began as a simple search engine is now a technology giant, which has revolutionized the world and the way we do things. But its power and involvement in our lives has also led to concerns about things like privacy. Al Jazeera's Rob Reynolds reports from Mountain View, California.
This is what Google's search page looked like the day it was launched. And this is the company's first headquarters, with founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin. 20 years later, Google's enormous success has given it this huge, ever-expanding Silicon Valley headquarters known as the Googleplex. Page and Brin are multi-billionaires, and Google knows a lot about us.
They know who you are. They know a lot about your habits. They know what kind of videos you watch. They know how many emails you get. They are a very large and important part of most people's daily lives.
Its search engine processes 3.5 billion requests per day, or 1.2 trillion a year. That information is power. Google uses the information to lucratively target advertising to customers.
The more they know about you, the more they can market you to advertisers. The collection of our activities and what we do every day, what are the rules? What are the rules that govern that when a company collects and amasses that much information?
In the U.S., Google, like other big tech companies, is largely unregulated regarding what they do with the information they collect.
The idea that these companies will self-regulate is laughable, and I think it's been shown that is insufficient.
That may be changing. In congressional hearings this week, lawmakers discussed a federal internet privacy law to regulate big tech companies' behavior. The European Union has taken a stricter line, passing sweeping new online privacy rules and recently levying heavy multi-billion-dollar fines on Google for anti-competitive practices. Google's corporate culture appears to be changing. Earlier this year, Google quietly dropped its famous motto, "Don't be evil," from its corporate code of conduct. In April, 3,000 Google employees signed a petition demanding the company end its partnership with the Pentagon, called Project Maven, that uses images and artificial intelligence to improve drone strike accuracy on the battlefield. Google now says it will not renew its Pentagon contract when it expires in 2019. In just 2 decades, Google has made itself practically indispensable in the lives of billions of people. What it will do with its information, power, and wealth over the next 20 years is something that should concern each one of them. Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera, Mountain View, California.
And that's our show for this week. On behalf of the entire Weekend Business Report team, I'm Keneal. See you next time.